on Tuesday.
And now, the former president says there's a plan B in place and it's in motion. And his vice president in Honorable Given Lubinda says Edgar Chagwa Lungu will stand despite the ConCourt ruling. What options does ECL has, or what options do you think he's left with to find himself on the ballot in 2026 despite the ruling?
You know, if I were surrounded by men like Given, I would be very cautious. I would be extremely cautious. They are my colleagues. You know, the problem is this, Zach, is that people work with the people they do not understand very well in terms of character and everything else. I know almost everybody in PF, and you can give me a piece of paper, I'll be able to write their profile. And 9 out of 10, I'll be right. 9 out of 10. Excuse me. I would be right. I took time to study each one of my colleagues that I worked with. I know their capacity, their competency, their levels of incompetence, their cunningness, their grandstanding themselves as leaders when they are just, or nothing. And you know, let me tell you this. Distance accords people a lot of respect, and it deceives human beings. So when you look at somebody at a distance, you tend to give them so much regard because you don't know them at close range. Wait until they get close to you. Then they exhibit their humanity. So be careful with the distance. It can create wrong perceptions and lead you to a faulty judgment about a situation, even about a human being. So, do they have a plan B? Not within the context of the law. There's nothing else that ECO can do and his team to get onto the ballot in 2026. Nothing within the context of the law. Nothing.
Not even through appealing this judgment?
To where? His own constitution says the constitutional court shall be the court of original and final jurisdiction. Only constitutional matters. There will no appeal anyway. No appeal anyway. So they are saying so the argument is if the ConCourt says it can still revisit its own judgment, meaning that there is room that it can still revisit this judgment. They qualified that. The ConCourt didn't say anybody can just move, take a 10, and go into the ConCourt registry and say, oh no, I've come because last week on Tuesday you delivered the judgment. Now I've come to get him. That would be chaotic. They qualified that where there were provisions that the court should have taken into the law, into account, and the court didn't. So you must convince the court that that situation has arisen. So they've not, provided floodgates, for abuse of the ConCourt. That's not you. So really, if I were listening to Given over that statement, how do you ignore him with contempt? He is politicking to please his boss. That's all that he's doing. There's nothing that they can do now within the framework of the law. Nothing. There cannot be any plan B, there cannot be any plan C, unless plan B is crying, just sitting down and shedding tears. That can be a good plan B. Unless plan B is for them to sit down and learn a lesson that wrongdoing does not pay. You don't get rewarded by doing something wrong today because you are in power. because it will catch up with you in the future. Unless that is, it is plan B for them to realize that when you are in public office, you must serve the Zambian people within their aspirations and expectations. That should only be their plan B. But to say that kulika plan B, tingabwelele futi, ECO is going to be, oh my God, stop lying to the man, because I'm sure even he himself, you know what Caesar, Julius, you know what William Shakespeare says? Unto thee be true. At least if you are not going to be truthful to somebody else, be true to yourself. And you can't be truthful to somebody else if you are not true to yourself. But this business of sitting around, no, Mr. President, this is about, trading, just fantasy. What George Bernard Shaw says in one of his books, the lure of fantasy, can be extremely dangerous. This is done, signed, sealed, and delivered. That's what they say in law.
But then,
okay.
Also, let's bring up the issue of you did make mention that some Patriotic Front members of Parliament sat and had a press briefing and advised him to get into retirement. If you are to advise the ECL what to do, and obviously your advice would be let him get into retirement and remain a statesman, but then can he still get back his ex-president's conditions because he lost them upon announcing that he's back into active politics? Can he still be able to restore what he's lost to himself?
To be honest with you, I'm not sure about that. I don't know of any provisions in the Constitution or in the Presidential Monuments Retirement
Package
Act, which says that once you relinquish the package, you can then plead repentance, get baptized, and get the package back. There's nothing like that in the law. It's the same argument that I had with the RB's removal immunity, of immunity.
Yes.
There's nothing in the Constitution which says once the immunity has been removed, you can
have it restored.
No, there's nothing. There's nothing. So he voluntarily relinquished, the presidential package and all that is attendant with that package. And I'm not sure. And if the Attorney General advised, that that's not possible, it will not be politics. I think he would be right. So, if you have done that, can you be a statesman again? No, I don't think so. You don't even qualify to be a statesman. First you go and create so much confusion, then come back after confusion yakanga, wabwele rafuta, no, nabwela manji ndine statesman. No, bantu wazakana, tiya boss. Zavuta chabe hapa. So that insignia of a statesman, I think he has thrown it down the drain. I don't want to be personal, but I think it's important to air these viewpoints because they are confusing people out there. You have, the so-called political analysts, that are in the print media every day, churning out, comments, When you look at them, you really don't even know what they are and who they are and what they have done. Some of them have never even worked, in government. But every day they're in front line, lead stories in the print media, to become opinion makers. You remember how much the intensity of the crusade against the ConCourt in an attempt to intimidate the ConCourt judges. There were comments every day. No, they just want, to eliminate, ECAO from, no, but this is democracy. No, but allow, ECAO to, to contest. Let the Zambian people, reject him, Before he even gets there, he must fit within the jacket of the law. Okay? And democracy cannot only be democracy when it favors you. It must be democracy even when the rules of democracy are against you. That's what if you don't want to accept that, you're a hypocrite. Jesus Christ cannot only be good when he answers your prayers. Even when he doesn't, you still must believe in him. Otherwise, you're a bad Christian. So this idea of perceiving or projecting the wrongdoers as the embodiment of democracy is wrong. This idea of projecting the wrongdoers, the people that have plundered the riches, the wealth of this country, to project them, like we have seen, recently, even by some churches. You invite the people that have plundered this nation with the evidence which is before the courts of law. You invite them, and you put them in front to speak, and you project them as victims of persecution, and use the congregation whose financial resources were plundered by the same guys. You use the congregation to cheer them or to justify the perception that these are being persecuted. I think it is wrong. I think it is wrong. I think it's abusing the congregation. And church leaders must stop doing that. These are human beings. You can't use, human beings that have been wronged by those that have occupied public office to cheer them that they are victims of persecution. When you know very well that corruption takes away resources, the resources that are supposed to be used to buy drugs in hospitals to treat the poor fellow in Mutendere or in Kanyama, to fix the roads. These church leaders know that. But because they think that the people don't understand, they bring them. And flash, on social media, crowds, cheering. Cheering a plunderer. And after cheering him, the next day, is convicted by the court of law. And then what do? You turn around and say, no, democracy space is shrinking. It's shrinking, yes, so that we have very few corrupt people. So that's good shrinking. If the space for corruption is going to shrink, then that shrinking is good. Okay? I've not heard church leaders express outrage at the evidence which has gone before the court, where people, Zachariah, have wealth which they can't account for. They have wealth which they can't account for. A special assistant to the president who has 33 motor vehicles, 11 for himself, 11 for his son, 11 for his wife, and the other 27 parked somewhere. 60 motor vehicles. Just a special assistant. How? From the salary. It means he was buying an average of 7 vehicles per year. Where would you get money as a special assistant, even as minister, even as president, to buy 7 motor vehicles in a year? And when these people are called to account, we hear stories. No, this is tribal persecution. No, this is tribal discrimination. No, this is, and they go before, to churches, go and be paraded there, bareba chushaba, oh my God. We have become used now to sermons in churches on Sunday, which have nothing to do with the Bible. No word of God preached. there's drought in the country, and the government, is not, fertilizer has not been distributed. So, no, in 2026, be careful, who to vote for, because there's a high cost of living. If Christ had spent his energies on that, there would be no church. And mind you, Jesus Christ did not leave behind a perfect society. He left an imperfect society. So all of us, what we are doing now that are alive, and those to come, and those past, is to see how we can stabilize, these societies. Jesus Christ left a society which was imperfect. So what is this preaching where we are talking about, no, there's a drought. There was a drought even during Christ's time. If there were no hungry people during Christ's time, how did Christ feed the hungry? If there were no sick people during Christ's time, how did he heal the sick? So what Bible are you reading? The Bible itself shows us that this is the type of society Christ lived in. So when we see these things today, what we are supposed to do is get together and figure out what to do. So anybody, Zakaria, who is going to tell me that if PF had been in power today, there would be no drought, that's nonsense. Nonsense, ridiculous. But that's the implication of some of their statements. Anybody who is going to tell me that if PF had won the 2021 election, this country would be better than it is today, with the JJs around, and the innocent Kalimanshi, and all these chaps, that those guys would have contributed to a better society. Give me a break. Give me a break. So the fact that there are mistakes now, and suddenly they are there, does not mean that the solution is PF. With the same clique of leaders, especially those that were there during my time. I'm not sure about the others that joined later. You can't abuse human beings like that using the pulpit. I think it's unfair.
Let me now interrogate your party's decision to join hands and work with the party in government. And reasons mainly were because you feel that, well, not that you feel, but you state clearly that your interest is in the fight against corruption.
Yes.
And since you joined in this alliance, there are a number of issues that are still hanging that a man like yourself with the interest to fight corruption should have raised and probably urgently advised the leadership
Yes.
to work on. For example, to date, the Anti-Corruption Commission has no board. To date, the Anti-Corruption Commission has no DG. And how then is the seriousness in the fight against corruption, would you say this government is championing? I will give you another scenario where I think that if this government really means to fight corruption, and the fight against corruption is a priority, we should have been hearing actions following the audit, for example, of ZAMSA, and the president received the audit report and made comments on it. And following those comments, people expected that action should have been taken on erring individuals. There is also in the public domain issues to do with the questionable procurement process of the ambulances that have not yet been delivered in the Ministry of Health. Again, there seem to be a lot of silence from the top, and people are questioning, how is the fight against corruption a priority for this government if it's so silent on all those that have come out in public? And for you, I would like your comment, especially on the questions that have been arisen on how the Anti-Corruption Commission has gone for this long without the board and without the DG.
Thanks, Zach. If you go back to the Corrupt Practices Act of 1980, the first act to establish the Anti-Corruption Commission, there was no board. There was no board established under that act. So the board is an administrative organ. It's not even a constitutionally recognized organ. It's an administrative organ to enhance the operations of the Anti-Corruption Commission. So to argue, like it's being argued, that the Anti-Corruption Commission cannot function without the board is not very correct. There's an acting DG now, and it's very common in the civil service to have acting or to have people acting in positions. It's very common because it gives time to the appointing authority to look around if you must get somebody into that substantive position, or you want to study the performance of the person who is acting so that they can be promoted into that position substantively. So these are matters that are all exercise the mind of the appointing authority. So I don't know the details, but I can only respond to the perception that the lack of a substantive DG and the lack of the board makes it difficult for that institution to fight corruption. I think that's not true. The issues of ZAMSA and the Ministry of Health, okay? We must be very careful about the perceptions. I was a victim of perceptions myself. I suffered purely on account of perceptions. That I was corrupt, that I was doing this, that I was doing that. And the people convinced. You know what they were doing in PF? Let me tell you this. If we met somebody in PF, Zach, and you said, oh my God, I had applied I submitted a letter to be appointed in the Foreign Service. And I don't know what has happened. Up to now, I haven't heard anything. They said, Danny Wynter, we saw your name actually on the list. He's the one who removed it. Okay? So you go and say, oh my God, this Wynter chap. Why does he hate me so much? In the meantime, I don't even know you. In the meantime, that is just a lie given to you. When you met somebody and said, oh, I'm so happy, I've just come from cabinet office, and I've been given a letter, I'm going to Brussels. They said, Nifuebo. We're the ones that spoke to the president. So they built this groundswell of hate against me. Part of which is still existing today, is still subsisting there. I continue meeting people who say to me, you are the one who sat on my appointment. And I ask them, who are you, sir? I've never met the man. I've never heard about him. Okay? So, we must be very, very careful about the perceptions. What I want to see myself are people that come up with the really, really cogent facts that are verifiable. I don't know if you listen. I'm sure you do. I get so impressed when you listen to CNN and you listen to BBC and these international media channels. They'll tell you, the Israelis have killed 250 Palestinians in the Gaza Strip. But we are not able to verify this. Okay, so they put a caveat. Don't believe what we say, because it's still subject to verification. But here, we believe everything that is posted on social media by anonymous people, because if you are telling the truth, give us your name. Don't remain anonymous. Long text message. Please don't disclose my name. This is what is happening in the Ministry of Health. Why don't you want us to disclose your name if what you are saying is true? Okay? But I'm not saying that there is no corruption in the UPND. I don't know. And what I've heard myself, because of having suffered, with the perceptions under PF, I find it very difficult to believe. Very difficult to believe. Okay? So, that is important. I think, let me deal with this part of the corruption fight. I think the crusade against corruption by HH is on course. 2 years ago, 1 year ago, we were saying, oh no, but there are no convictions. Now the convictions have started coming. Because the courts are impartial tribunals. They don't work at the pace of politicians. They work at their own pace to deliver justice. Justice to everybody. That's what they established for. So they will not be at the beck and call of the politicians to deliver quick judgments so that the politicians are happy that there is no. They work at their own pace. Now, the convictions have started coming, rolling out very slowly but surely. Zachariah, what are we seeing? We are seeing those that are convicted. We are seeing those that are convicted being either pardoned or sending groups of people to see the president to be pardoned. Okay? You know that Edgar Lungu was pardoned after being convicted of corruption. Convicted by the subordinate court, convicted by the High Court, and finally the conviction and sentence confirmed by the Supreme Court. What happened after he was pardoned? In fact, we were told that if you don't pardon him, you will die in prison. It's almost a year now since he was pardoned. So it means even the doctors that put forward that document that the man is terminally ill and he could die in months. If I were in government, I would hold them to account. Okay? The fight against corruption cannot be self-defeating. You can't, on the one hand, convict a chap for corruption and 3 months down the road, pardon them.
But why would you hold account doctors who put up such a report? Because it's only true that I think it was on the basis of saying if he remains in that environment, he could die in months. And
yes,
he hasn't died in those months simply because now he can access good medical treatment.
No. He was still accessing that.
Well,
you're still accessing that.
Well, the medical can come in different ways.
Yes.
Diet as well.
Yes.
Could help improve your health.
Look, when you are convicted, you don't live in a hotel. Otherwise, why should you be convicted if you are going to have a double bed in Chumbakaira? If you are going to be drinking wine in Chumbakaira, why should you be a convict? You are convicted because you have wronged society. That's why you are convicted. And because you have wronged society, there is an aspect of inconvenience to your life. That's why you are put away. This is a country where a corrupt fellow is convicted and is given 5 years for corruption. The guy who has stolen, who steals my side mirror of my car, the side mirror of my car, is convicted and sentenced to 2 years. The guy who got $2 million, which was supposed to be, to go and finance the purchase of medicine for the Zambian people, and some of them have died because of that act, is in for 5 years. How can that be justice? A guy who has stolen a loaf of bread in ShopRite is a thief. And the guy who has stolen $1 million is also a thief. But maybe the other one is even a better thief because he wanted the loaf of bread just to eat. He was hungry. The other one who has gotten $1 million, he has $2 million. So he's just greedy. Just a greedy fellow who doesn't care about society. So I'm against these convicted fellows being pardoned by the president. I wish I could speak to the president. Stop, these pardons. You are compromising, the whole fight on corruption. Let these guys go and save.
If they had to die, you would rather
let them die.
die.
Let them die. There are better people before them who have died. Wait until you see the conviction of the New York city mayor, who is being prosecuted now for compromising the fire regulations of the Turkish consulate in New York. Wait until you get his conviction. For jumping on a plane, for a plane, on a plane ticket purchased by a Turkish company in Ankara. Wait until he will go in for 25 years. He will go in for 25 years. Kuno Musovera 5 years. Achoka muntu. Before that, he's even pardoned. He's even got the courage, of saying, me, I want to go abroad for medical treatment. Convict. You have the right to determine where you should be treated. Convict. You're convict. Okay? So, I'm making these points, to tell you that it should not be the president to compromise the crusade against corruption. It must be for the president to get more supporters, and hence our joining the UPND alliance, so that we can cleanse this society of corruption. There will be no economic development. It doesn't matter what good policies you have in place if and when corruption thrives. Nothing. So corruption must be dealt with both within the UPND and outside the UPND, and firmly so. That's my view.
Thank you very much.